I know what you're thinking.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Because the MG Cyberster is bringing sexy back. Yeah! I'm Will, and this is China Driven. I could drone on about MG's history of making two-seat roadsters, the heritage, the subtle styling nods to the past. Plenty have, and plenty will. Or perhaps be edgy and lament about the fact MG is no longer really a British brand. Boo-hoo. Truly, I just want to look at it, drive it, enjoy it. In these recent EV years, MG has had heavy praise. The MG4, for example, has been heavily patted on the back by automotive journalists, and rightly so, as a cracking little EV. But this is on a whole different level. This is car porn. It makes me feel kind of naughty just looking at it. And we get to drive it. Okay, well, the weather absolutely sucks today, but this is going to the UK and buying a Roadster in the UK. This is real world testing. Proper summer British weather here. The best part about this MG Roadster being an EV isn't the instant torque, the ridiculous amount of power which it has in gobs, or the fact it's blistering fast in a straight line. No, the best part about this MG Roadster being an EV is that you can punch the living daylife out of it and you do not have to worry about your K-Series blowing a head gasket. MGs traditionally follow that British sports car vibe of being lightweight with modest power, but this all-wheel drive model 100% breaks tradition, because this is no light-footed thing at 2.2 tons, but then again, power isn't modest either. An absolutely rude 400 kilowatts of power and 725 newton meters of torque. That's 536 horsepower in old money. Obviously, this thing is quick, but how quick is quick? Bloody quick. 3.2 seconds to 100 kilometers an hour. This is MG's fastest car in their 100-year history. Putting it into perspective, the MG-TF was the quickest MG Roadster until this came along, and that took over double the time to hit 100 kilometers an hour. There's also the rear-wheel drive versions, which will be less rip your face off. There'll be a 231 kilowatt and a 250 kilowatt single motor rear-wheel drive, and they're said to be able to do the dash in 4.6, 4.8 seconds. Top speed, not that it matters for those of us without Autobahn access, is 200 kilometers an hour. So there's no CDC or air suspension in here, just traditional springs. There's a double wishbone up front and a multi-link in the rear, but MG's big shout out for the suspension is that it was tuned by Marco Finello, the guy responsible for setting up Michael Schumacher's F1 car at Ferrari. Later he headed up development of the Ferrari FXXK and did some suspension work on Ferrari's Le Mans and endurance racing champions. That's a pretty decent resume, and I have to say, driving this is a dream. It's far more GT than hardcore sports car. It's actually really comfortable in here, but it's got absolutely lethal amounts of power. It's a good laugh. And I think with 250 kilowatts of power, the rear wheel drive, around 300 horsepower, I bet that would be even more fun. Maybe not on a day like today where it keeps chucking it down with rain, but in the dry, yeah, might be a tidy bit of kit. As far as price, we don't actually know yet. MG have been quite tight-lipped about it. They have said that it's going to be affordable, whatever that means. Hopefully, future Will can do me a solid and tell me how much this costs. Yeah, so here in China, we've heard it's going to be under 350,000 RMB, or around 40,000 pounds, or $48.7 thousand. However, rumors are in the UK, it's going to be under 550,000 RMB, which would be about 62.8 thousand pounds, or $76,500. Back to you. For battery charging and range, we know some information kind of unofficially because it's already out there. We know there's going to be two batteries, a 64 kilowatt hour and a 77 kilowatt hour. There'll be two rear wheel drive models and a all-wheel drive model. Now, the 64 kilowatt hour rear wheel drive model will have a range of around 501 kilometers supposedly, and the more powerful rear wheel drive will get the larger 77 kilowatt hour pack with a claimed range of 580 kilometers. And then this all-wheel drive comes with that larger 77 kilowatt hour CATL battery, and it has a range of around 520 kilometers. For charging times, we don't know. Expect the industry standard 20 to 80% in half an hour on a DC fast charger. With some help from Ting from TIY, go check out his channel, and his little laser measurer, we were able to take some measurements of the trunk space back here, and we came up with a figure somewhere between 240 litres and 245 litres. It is fairly long. Obviously, it doesn't have much depth. They do say that this can definitely take a 24-inch suitcase. I think it can take a larger 28-inch, but it might be a bit of a squeeze, and you may need to kind of wrestle it in. On these media events, we're given a lot of marketing buff, and for this MG Cyberster event, let's just say the crib sheet is romantically poetic, to say the least. So I thought it'd be fun to share just a smidge of it with you. And therefore, here is a poem about the Cyberster, courtesy of MG. It's titled, "When the Roadster unfolds, the world unveils itself to you." How to embrace the world with unrestrained freedom. Underneath the starry skies, day and night we travel together. Through woods and winds, savoring every scent of nature, embracing mountains and seas where our senses know no bounds. As the electric Roadster slowly opens up, a new way to embrace the world emerges. Yeah, but that aside, they say that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And if you have eyes to behold, I don't see how you can argue that this is anything other than an absolute stunner. Front, back, side, roof up, roof down, any way you slice it, it's beautiful. Romantic poetry aside, this looks bloody good. MG claimed that this is inspired by the MGB's water style grille. I'd say strenuously, but I'm not here for nostalgic value. Now, this diving front end with all these sharp lines and creases just cascading into the center make this thing look fast, even standing still. And of course, all of the aero around the MG Cyberster is 100% functional. There's no light bar here. Instead, I'd say the front end is almost far more traditionally styled. It doesn't scream EV. It screams Roadster. And I think it looks good. I think it looks really good. Okay, so the elephant in the room back here is these huge arrows for the brake lights and indicators. Now, I know that we make fun of Gen Z being a little bit not based in reality, but do they really need arrows to guide them on the road? I think it's a bit overkill. But joking aside, I do really like this wraparound LED bar back here. There's a nice flick off the tail, and this huge diffuser down here, again, 100% functional. I do also like this black trim that goes all the way around the car. It really helps to lower the eye line of this already quite low Roadster. However, I do prefer the concept where it was a completely black panel back here. You may or may not be able to get that as an option when you buy the car. Overall, this back end is purely Roadster. Love getting a glimpse of the rollover bars there at the back of the headrests. Overall, it's another great angle. The side might actually be my favorite angle. That crazy aggressive windscreen rake, which may pose a problem for you giants who are taller than me. Long nose, absolutely classic Maserati GT vibes to me. It's got Pirelli P0s all the way around, with a 245/40 in the front and 275/35s in the rear, wrapped around a 20-inch alloy. And surprisingly, for an EV, they fill the wheel arches really well. It hasn't got so many creases as the front end. It's a lot smoother down the side, but there is still some 100% functional aero here. I do like the line that wraps around from the hood into the side, and this line that juts over these rear haunches. that stick out quite nicely. Obviously, it's also got electric scissor doors, but let's look what the profile looks with the roof up. Let me just quickly jump in here, close the door, and lift that roof. This is, according to MG, the first electric soft top in the world. It's pretty good looking, I think, even with the roof up. I know, I get it, but I'm a basic bitch and I've always coveted the Supra Mark IV, and this driver focus cockpit, well, it just reminds me of that car with its kind of wraparound layout. This is a selfish car. The passenger is merely a ballast to help maintain that 49-51 weight distribution. Everything is focused on the driver. Now, behind the steering wheel, you get 3 screens that are kind of wrapped around. The central one is your digital instrument panel. You can have a kind of car model on there powered by Unreal Engine 4. In fact, all the 4 screens in here are being powered by a Snapdragon 8155 CPU. Flanking that central screen are these 2 little touch screens. The one on the left does all kinds of driving focus stuff, and the one on the right is your kind of infotainment screen. It's got your music, your sat nav, phone calls, and your apps all on this side. Down here, there is a 4th screen in the center console, and it's kind of like another control panel. You have your AC down here, as well as information about battery and power. And the last one is turning on and off the different settings for the ADAS features. Next to that screen, you'll find the switch gauge, which are physical buttons. Above that, some capacitive touch buttons for things like the 360 camera and also the AC controls. And then below all of that, you'll find some physical buttons for the scissor doors and for the operating the roof. In terms of materials in here, now MG say that this is going to be affordable, but I mean, there is a lot of leather around in here. There's Alcantara, and you know, there's lots of very soft touch materials in here. I think it's a really, really good standard inside this cabin. It's really kind of well put together as well. These 6-way adjustable electronic seats they're super comfortable. They got massive side bolstering, and you know, this is a kind of GT car, so comfort is, you know, expected. And there's also a lot of room in here as well, even if you're, you know, kind of going over 6 foot. There's some metal accent points like the speaker grills and these lovely metal paddles behind the steering wheel, one which cycles through mode and the other that cycles through the brake regen. There are some things that are maybe not so good. They've got these little joysticks on the steering wheel, and why it's kind of cool they've got these joysticks, they're made out of like really cheap, what feels like flimsy plastic, and they kind of feel like they might break if you use them too hard. One thing that I do like, which I think maybe clever isn't the word, but kind of unique, is in the center console here, it is plastic and it is fake carbon fiber. But unlike normal fake carbon fiber, which is normally fake carbon fiber weave, this is kind of a fake crushed carbon fiber, and it's kind of really cool. One notable thing that is missing from this interior though for an EV is there is no wireless phone charger. There is just a little pocket here for you to put it in. A little bit of storage back here with some USBs and SD card slot as well. There is a glove box, but really there isn't much. There's a little bit of storage behind the seats as well, but you don't buy this car to carry a lot of stuff. Again, another tiny little pocket either side of this central console. Just one last thing, going back to the steering wheel, it's actually a really nice wheel to really hold, but also they've got these 2 buttons that come off the steering wheel in the middle here. One is for your ADAS, but this red one is where the magic happens. This says Super Sport, for when sport is not enough. If you press this button, the dials change, you get a big old tack in the middle, and you get a G-force meter right next to it. You've got a lap timer on the left here, and also a graph measuring, I believe, your G-force as well. And over here, tire pressure and the temperature of the battery and the motors, which is important because this car, if you are taking it on track and you're really working it, and the motors start getting kind of hot, or the battery gets hot, and you see the performance start dipping, you can actually manually press a button to start cooling down the battery and motors, and then basically get all your power back. So that's a pretty cool feature. A few interesting things back here. Well, there is a place back here to latch your dog's leash to, so your little doggy doesn't jump out when the roof's down. And another little thing that I really do love is in these scissor doors, obviously door pockets are a problem, but if we can get it to stop here, they have these little open close. Now, it's not much bigger than a pair of sunglasses, but you could shove some little trinkets in there. It's a nice touch because normally scissor doors are completely useless in storage. But yeah, overall, I really like the interior. I like this car. When MG said, hey, do you want to come to Hainan to drive our MG Cyberster? I was like, sun, sea, sand, and a 2-seat drop-top convertible. What more could you ask for? Unfortunately, the rain has not stopped since we got here. We have very few breaks in order to try and record stuff today. And we're only here for one day. But this all-wheel drive has been absolutely so sure-footed, even in the wet, torrential downpour. It's been so great. I mean, it just carves up these corners, and it's so comfortable in here as well. They've done a really nice job with the suspension. The car handles really well from what we can tell, obviously on public roads, and it's been pretty wet today, but it seems to handle very nicely, comfortably. This is a brilliant GT cruiser. You could definitely crush miles in this and have fun. The interior, yeah, that's also on point. This, in China, they say is going to be affordable. You might get yourself a really, really decent car for a good price, for the price that I've heard floated about. The prices I've heard floated about for this in the UK, some people have been saying like the £60,000 mark. I mean, against what there is in the UK market, I mean, it's still a lot of car for your money in the EV space. But obviously, it's going to be less of a bargain price-wise compared to China. But selling this overseas is where MG sees this car doing well. They only are expecting, they told me, about 600 a month in China. So this has been built for us Brits. This is the MG Cyberster. The weather is awful today for doing a Roadster, but it's still been fun. The MG Cyberster going to the UK soon. Expect weather like this. This is China driven. Okay. Oh yeah, guan, guan, guan. You can open the roof while driving along, but I mean, it is absolutely torrential here, so we're not gonna do that.